And thanks for joining us. We'll give people just a couple more minutes to get logged in, then we'll get started. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us today. My name is Beth Neeser. I'm going to be your host for our webinar, 7 Tips for Plant Turnarounds. I'm joined by our Sedlock speaker, Mike Aughenbaugh, who's going to be discussing best practices for more effective turnaround management. And that's going to include tips for staying on schedule and maximizing the safety and reliability of fluid systems. Mike is the Associate Target Market Manager for the oil, gas, and chemicals industries. And he has been with Sedlock for nearly 20 years, where he's worked for both authorized Sedlock sales and service centers as well as Sedlock Company. If you do have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to type them right into the Q&A section. We'll get to as many as we can at the end of the presentation. And then if there are any that we don't have time for, we'll be sure to have Mike follow up with you directly. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mike.
Thank you for the intro, Beth. Good to have everyone around today for one of my favorite topics, which is always about plant turnaround. So, as Beth mentioned, I've been in the organization for 20 years. I've been in a variety of different roles, and one of my favorite roles of all time was calling on downstream customers, especially around turnaround season, because it was always a little bit hectic. And we always had to try to find ways around it, right? So thanks everyone for joining, and I believe that the timing comes at possibly the best possible quarter of the year, because we're starting to enter into fall turnaround season. And while it may be too late to take some of these tips into consideration, it's always good to look forward for possibly the spring turnarounds and beyond. So thank you all for joining, and like Beth says, please put those questions in the box and we'll get to them. So talk a little bit about plant turnarounds, right? So especially going through these in the last few years, really a lot of the post-pandemic plant turnarounds are some of the most expensive and time-consuming maintenance projects, because a lot of the production and because of the loss of production and the expense of the shutdown itself. So really there's a time constraint in addition to many other constraints that you're dealing with. And these can really be complex animals, because as the complexity increases, they become very costly and very difficult to manage because of the unknowns. Post-COVID, a lot of these plant turnarounds have been steadily recovering. But although there's been a lot of challenges and adjustments that continue to impact the industry. So, a couple of the few critical observations include increased safety measures, delayed schedules, high demand for maintenance, a lot of issues with supply chain, right? I remember back in late 2020, somewhere around there, a lot of those fall turnarounds, I never thought I'd have to say this, but things like getting pipe nipples and welded construction of piping systems were really, really difficult because of obvious reasons. So overall, while post-COVID plant turnarounds are gradually recovering, challenges related to safety, workforce availability, and supply chain persists. So here are some of the main challenges that we've observed when conducting some of these plant turnarounds. So the first thing is on workforce and availability and health. COVID-19 impacted the health of the workers. This led to absenteeism, labor shortages, but not only that, the pandemic has caused a shortage of skilled workers in some regions. Travel restrictions and health concerns have also limited the availability of the personnel for plant turnarounds over the past 2 years, and health and safety protocols are also necessitated with reduced workforce capacity affecting turnaround schedules. We can't deny that the economic fallout from the pandemic strained finances for many companies. The budget cuts reduced capital availability, and cost consciousness may hinder investment in plant turnaround projects. There's a constant trade-off amongst priorities, cost, and schedule in every plant turnaround planning. Plant safety and environmental considerations are becoming a critical factor, not just on turnarounds, but everywhere, right? Operators now incorporate stricter safety protocols to prevent the spread of COVID and ensure the well-being of workers. This includes things like regular testing, enhanced hygiene practices, social distancing, and not only that, but companies are also focused on energy efficiency, waste reduction, and emissions control during maintenance activities to align with these regulations. And this is mainly meant to meet sustainability targets. The next one would be reduced operational activities during the pandemic resulted in a backlog of maintenance activities, right? So if the turnaround was not as efficient time-wise as you thought, a lot of those things were moved into other schedules or kind of kicked down the road a little bit. As economic rebounds happened, there was a surge in demand for plant turnarounds, but there are a lot of new discoveries during job scoping and material delay due to supply chain disruption. So as a result, diversifying resources, securing critical parts, and implementing contingency plans are critical to mitigate disruptions. So all in all, addressing these challenges require careful planning, adaptability, and a focus on health, safety, and risk management to ensure a successful plant turnaround post-COVID. Industry adaptability and focus on technology-driven solutions are helping to overcome these hurdles and ensure the efficient and safe execution of turnarounds. So Sedlock understands that every turnaround can be conducted in a safe and timely manner with a peace of mind that the unit and the plant will start up smoothly. Safety is paramount, right? We all know that that's the most important thing. And turnarounds shall be executed with rigorous procedures to protect the well-being of the workers in the plant. And, time is of the essence, and quick, efficient turnaround minimizes deadlines and saves costs. Maintaining a strict focus on quality prevents startup delays and ensure plant startup in a reliable manner. So we would like to share 7 tips for successful plant turnarounds. These are some things you can start doing today, right? So don't waste any time and implement these right away. So the first is engage early with trusted partners. I would say, pre-COVID, this was something where, maybe you were focused on the large equipment, but really there needs to be an added emphasis on some of the smaller components as well. We'll get into that a little bit. So as a very basic overview, planning for turnarounds is an extensive process. It often begins years before the work itself starts, and for good reasons, right? Being prepared as possible helps eliminate unforeseen project pitfalls. And so a lot of you that are involved in project planning, you may put items into a folder, and then that folder may sit on a shelf for a few years until it gets green lit, right? So, significant plant shutdowns, they're carried out swiftly, but with a high level of intensity in its execution. And it can consume an equivalent cost of a yearly maintenance budget in 4 to 5 weeks. One quality of well-prepared projects is the owner's early engagement with critical parts and service suppliers. Many fluid systems are complex entities. Some require specialized parts and highly specific alloy materials depending on the process. For example, you may require exotic alloys such as Monel in an alkylation unit in a refinery, or 6 moly parts in an offshore platform. Lead times for these engineered to order parts are typically longer, so engaging with your suppliers early is always a good idea, especially on those exotic alloys. A longer term overview allows for operations to make decisions on the plant turnaround schedule to gain the best output. The next one is going to be identifying new opportunities. While the goal of turnarounds is to restore all parts of the system to the optimal working condition, turnarounds are also great opportunities to make additional system improvements that can result in high reliability and performance. Operators who have already engaged with vendors earlier are ahead of the curve, and they can work further to work with these specialists for recommendations on system improvements. System enhancements would include things like pre-engineered panels. One example that Sedlock has always supported a customer identifying an opportunity to improve the system, right? And so Sedlock engineers can assist with design support and fabrication of things like sampling cabinets that isolate from the system media from the user during the sampling process for a local company in Asia. By using a door to create a separate enclosed area, the customer now receives more reliable and accurate samples much faster than before and with increased safety. So making the improvement requires advanced planning, as it requires approval due to management of change before the scope is frozen. So really, all in all, what you should be looking for here is ways in which you can simplify the installation criteria for your contractors on site. The next would be prepare for the unexpected. And what this basically means is you need to be making allowances for variables and contingencies throughout the turnaround. And this can ensure overall project efficiency beyond just that critical path that sometimes consumes these types of projects. For example, due to large and complex nature of the fluid systems throughout chemical plants and refineries, it's practically impossible to know which and how many specific components will be needed throughout the TAR. TAR is short for turnaround, right? And for that reason, it's beneficial to stock a variety of hoses, valves, and adapters, prior to the start of the project. So having some of these basic components already on hand can be a significant time saver versus having to order additional parts once installation is well underway. And this also makes perfect sense from a cost standpoint, right? Because if you need additional components, now it's all hands on deck. You get things like expedite fees and shipping costs and things like that. So of course, no operator wants to be stuck with unused inventory. And for that reason, sometimes it's beneficial to seek out terms with suppliers, allowing you to stock temporary or consignment inventory. Sedlock service centers can support you in this aspect, as we have local warehouses to store the right parts so that they're always available. Also, involving a third-party expert can also help increase rigor in the planning and scope challenge process. These experts can be either within or from the outside of the company. They should be specialized in their own field, be it technologies or project management, or even help oversee the installation of components. The next is get local support. Sometimes the unexpected is going to happen. It happens during every turnaround project. I've never been involved with one that goes completely smooth without surprises. And you may not have the right parts on hand at the time when you need them. When you're coordinating with your vendors, ensure that they can offer localized support near your project for any unforeseen part sourcing that may occur to ensure timely delivery. Not only that, but it's also beneficial to have local field engineers on standby to help prioritize the implementation of solutions and supervise the installations as needed, right? We talked about some of those prefabricated assemblies that can help. It's also good to have someone on site to help you show where these things should be hooked up to make sure they're perfect. Operators should select local specialists that are backed by a global team of experts to ensure that no time is lost in any plant turnaround. Sedlock's trained field engineers are available at your local sales and service centers to support you with on-site services to ensure a seamless plant turnaround with minimal downtime. The next is going to be on critical parts installation. Right, so the number of technicians working on each turnaround can be staggering, right? Hundreds or thousands of laborers from different firms and disciplines, oftentimes from around the world. As such, the level of installation knowledge across numerous vendors is often inconsistent. Inconsistency is the last thing any owner wants on a turnaround project. For example, poorly routed tubes might be at risk of vibration, fatigue, and an experienced technician may not consider the right tools or equipment for work. Installing these parts without the right tool or equipment can be potentially damaging to components and lead to poor performance later on. Now, how do you ensure consistent installation across dozens of different contractors? And one strategy is to include training and certification with your specification. This ensures that anyone performing the work on your system is equipped with certain baseline knowledge and is familiar with the sound installation best practices. Sedlock is committed to helping you work safer and smarter. So our qualified trainers, which you could find at every sales and service center, can provide you, the installers, and the maintenance vendors with a wide range of training to minimize installation and maintenance errors and to ensure that your system maintains integrity and reliability. The sixth tip we have is to seek out prefabricated assemblies. We mentioned this a little bit earlier on, but things are becoming more and more complex, and there are more and more pressures to increase safety, efficiency, and environmental edicts are met. And because of this complexity, many systems and chemical plants and refineries, the more they can be prefabricated, assembled, and tested prior to the turnaround, the more efficiently contractors can install these critical systems and reduce error. Prefabricated assemblies can once again help alleviate expertise and knowledge, consistency concerns across numerous vendors and contractors, and can free up labor hours. Starting with proven standard designs, highly trained and experienced professionals operating from local specialists will configure fluid system assemblies to meet operators' needs. Grab sampling panels are one good area of opportunity. This allows for safe, efficient sample capturing while meeting your specific plant needs. Elsewhere, mechanical seal support systems can help increase the mechanical seal lifespan. And finally, analytical subsystems, including fast loops, field stations, calibration and switching modules, sample probes, and fluid distribution headers, can bring efficiency and consistency to your operations with simplified design footprints. The last is maintaining quality control. And sometimes when we talk about quality control, we think about pieces and parts, but really we're talking about much more than that. So through the lens of quality control, it's always in the operation's best interest to maintain strict control of quality and consistency of the parts being installed during a turnaround. Specifications that allow too much flexibility may lead some contractors to source less expensive and lower quality components. Inconsistent parts quality across different systems can lead to inconsistent performance, premature maintenance needs, or downtime later on. And keeping a tight, up-to-date specification that allows only for the use of high-quality components in your fluid system components, in your fluid systems, is one way to make turnarounds effective and also increase that envelope of forgiveness that you have if an installation goes faulty. So therefore, it's beneficial for operations to launch a capability building program to augment the technical team skills through trainings and hirings. A vendor that can train the team to better understand sampling systems, increase the consistency and quality of fluid system installation, and learn how to recognize and solve sampling issues itself, can be a partner to you to develop skilled technical teams for the operators' organizations. So once again, here we list the 7 effective ways that you can help overcome the turnaround hurdles and ensure an efficient, safe execution of plant turnarounds. Early engagement, identify new opportunities for system improvements, prepare for the unexpected, ensure availability of local support, keep a close eye on installation of critical parts, seek out prefabricated assemblies, and maintain tight quality control of fluid system components are some of the ways to overcome plant turnaround challenges. One of the last things I want to lead you with are 2 specific case studies where Sedlock has actually supported our customers in the region in their plant turnaround. The first case is on system improvement performance. Sedlock has supported a major oil company to improve their system performance. The owner originally used mobile skids and trolleys to inject nitrogen into the equipment during shutdown and startup. As part of the system improvement, they were looking for a permanent solution, and Sedlock deployed a solution where our team of engineers conducted flow calculations, tube sizing, and fabricated a system to meet the customer's requirements. The application requires nitrogen for blanketing. And for those of you that are not familiar with blanketing, blanketing is a way in which to control the environment of the product that you are storing inside of a tank or container. And it also aids in the cooling of the reactors of the systems, in this case. The instrument air have high flow rates, therefore tube size is critical in this application. As a result, the system installation, the owner, saved 2 to 3 days worth of reprocessing, which amounted to several hundreds of thousands of dollars saved during the plant turnaround. The second case is around Sedlock services. Sedlock field engineers conducted a hose advisory service to identify the proper hose length and installation best practices during control valve overhaul in a plant turnaround. The owner, a leading petrochemical company, trusted Sedlock's advice and recommended solutions to help eliminate leaks on instrument air control valves during the plant startup. Our qualified trainers conducted training to support the health of the system and the operations team that were there to maintain it. Sedlock's early engagement with the client coupled the advisory service during the job scoping, and this has benefited them in starting up the plant in a safe and efficient manner. So these are just 2 examples of hundreds out there where we have found ways to support the turnaround efforts on site in their plant turnarounds to help increase efficiency and save your facilities some money. Before I end, a little background on Sedlock. So Sedlock has been around for more than 75 years, and we have years of experience and expertise developing fluid system products, assemblies, and services for the oil and gas and chemical industries. Sedlock offers customized solutions and services, including system design, assembly, and training. And we work closely with customers to create tailored fluid system solutions that meet specific application requirements, ensuring optimal performance and safety. We're dedicated in delivering turnaround solutions to customers. And if you're interested in learning more about effective plant turnarounds, Sedlock can help. Our field engineering team regularly supports oil, gas, and chemical customers around the world with effective plant turnarounds. And with that, I'm going to open it up to Beth if we have any questions out there.
Great, thanks, Mike, for sharing that information. So we do have a couple questions. First one here, what are some common opportunities that customers are often neglecting when they're planning for their turnarounds?
Yeah, I kind of mentioned it a little bit at the beginning where we talked about the critical path of projects, and critical paths tend to deal a lot with people and major assets, right? So for example, if you're having a heat exchanger turnaround where you're pulling one out of service, a lot of times there's a lot of concentration on the heat exchanger itself and the critical path of getting that replacement or that service in. The little things, the nuts and bolts, tend to get ignored, and sometimes those can be the biggest problems. So one of my favorites is steam tracing. That tends to be the biggest thing that, steam tracing can also be referred to as winterization, but those little tubes and valves and steam manifolds and condensate manifolds tend to get ignored as just seen as like a commoditized component of the project that may have an estimate of number of days or so associated with it. That's really one of those areas that post-COVID has become more and more important because that also has its own supply chain counted within, right? And so you can reach out to vendors that can actually help plan that component of your project and take it, not add extra work on your end, but make that go just as smoothly as everything else.
Okay, great. And then you also mentioned training. Can you talk a little bit more about some of the specific types of training that Sedlock offers?
Yeah, so I've been around long enough to realize that training has become way more important than it used to be back in the day. And so I remember in my early days of being a salesperson, we'd perform a 1-hour lunch and learn and come in and show you how to, install the fittings. And it's become a class that's in some facilities, some end users have actually required that as a certification on their end. So there's a couple of organizations out there, IOGP being one of them, and some of the major oil players are actually requiring people, contractors as well as on-site personnel, to attend tube fitting and bending essentials training classes through Sedlock. And so that's one of the things that is becoming a requirement. I think Some of it has to do with just kind of like the installation was always kind of seen as a commodity, right? You just pull something up until it feels right. And there have been a number of safety incidents over the years, as well as plant shutdowns, which have kind of forced facilities to include that as part of their training. So if you're a contractor out there that's watching this today, this is something that may unfortunately sneak up on you prior to work taking place. That's something that a lot of vendors can provide to you and help you out and make sure that consistency is implemented with your project.
Okay, great, thanks. And then there's one more here. So you had talked about the importance of engaging a vendor partner early in the process. Is there one specific time or, one thing that kind of should trigger that outreach to a vendor partner?
Yeah, and I was talking with someone yesterday about this briefly, but when you have normal site work versus turnaround work, that turnaround is usually handled by a separate group. And in many cases, when a project is at the beginning stages of discussion, you can't engage someone early enough, right? You can't engage someone early enough. If you're talking to a vendor a month before something needs to be installed, it's too late, right? So as soon as a project hits your desk, start to reach out to people and ask questions about how they may be able to assist with certain things, like I mentioned about tracing, around some tubing work that's going on, around the installation of things like transmitters and calibration of those. Anything involving exotic alloys, if you're at a downstream customer and you have a project for an alky unit, that is definitely a red flag to reach out to someone and say, hey, let's start talking about metallurgies here, because not only is the timing of a project going to dramatically change costs from the start to the end, but hopefully, God forbid, we don't have another COVID that kind of sneaks up and throws a wrench into everything. So, the one theme I want you to take away today with is, these vendors that were typically not part of your turnaround planning process, they definitely need to be at the table because things that in their world may be able to help you manage your project more effectively for when you're ready to go.
All right, and that concludes our list of questions that we received for today. So thanks again to everyone for attending, and thanks, Mike, for all that great information.